Byteside Tech is brought to you by Sennheiser, nothing better. Trainer Micro, securing your web world. And ASUS, inspiring innovation, persistent perfection.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another Byteside Tech. It's okay to cheer down. Rapturous. Thank you everybody. We're back for another Byteside Tech tonight. We're talking about all things extreme PC, and I think we should introduce our illustrious panel of guests. Starting out on the left, I'm going to do the stage direction properly this time. We have a fabulous overclocker from teamau.net, if you're looking for them, Dino. Making his first panel appearance, but of course he's at the heart of the Byteside operation, former Atomic and PC Power Play and all those sorts of things. Now Mr. Byteside, behind the scenes mostly. If you've been here, you've seen him before. Ben Mansell. As we're talking extreme PC action, we thought it would be good to get somebody here from one of our, obviously the sponsor, but a fabulous hardware action kind of company, and one of their product guys is Harlem Cheng. And the editor of The Overclocker, one of those lovely online magazines, but not just a website. It's a real magazine. It's all fancy. You've got to go check it out. Nick Ross. And now we're going to get right into the thick of the discussion with the Big Byte. So, yes, extreme PC. I thought the best place to start, because now we've got a good enthusiast audience, but there's also plenty of people who watch who aren't necessarily into the really hardcore side of computing. So a good place to start might be Nick. I'm hoping you can help us get down to the, what is extreme PC about? What are we aiming for?
Well, from a commercial products point of view, extreme PCs will be something that comes from, a very expensive computer, obviously, but generally you can expect it to be overclocked to get extra performance, and also to be pimped up quite a bit so it looks really good. We've got examples around the world of Voodoo PC, which got bought by HP recently, well, about a year ago actually, it's not that recent. That should hopefully be coming to Australia soon. And Dell bought Alienware about the same time, and they've just announced their new line of PCs. And you only have to look at them to see why they're extreme. You've got the best components, it's all overclocked, very fast, very nice. But hell, you can basically build one yourself using good components or cheap components and overclock them. And there's lots of what we call white box manufacturers like Inspire. There's a guy who runs that called David Kong, who builds some of the best PCs in Australia. He'll overclock a very good PC for you that will not break and look fantastic. But there's various levels of where we can go with that.
And I think maybe a good place to dive into then is the whole idea of the people who are, the DIY kind of scene. And obviously there's a few layers to that. Ben, there's quite a few different parts to the community that is extreme sort of PCs.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I don't think it's necessary for someone to overclock a PC for it to be regarded as an extreme PC. I think that, yes, there is a category that can be called extreme that is the overclocked PC, but you also have your hardcore modders, and a modder's PC is not performance-based necessarily. It's a handcrafted passionate work of art. But in terms of the community, look, it all comes from passion. You have to really want to do it. It's hard work. It's intimidating. To overclock is scary. To build a modded PC is 6 months in your garage and a lot of stuff ups. And to simply have an off-the-shelf component-based PC that's all got high-end stuff in it is expensive. You know, so there are several barriers there. So if you've passed, checked any of those boxes, and own what could be described as an extreme PC, then you are part of a close elite group, I think it's fair to say.
And Harlan, one of the things that I wonder about, I guess, is for people like, you know, ASUS, is it there's obviously different kinds of hardware that you guys offer for, you know, general use versus extreme use. So what kind of does that mean at your end?
We, as a top of the class motherboard manufacturer, we do have several range of motherboard products. Especially we can call ROG range. That's Republic of Gamma range. That's as regard to on the overclocker side, it's top of the range products. So I personally believe anything built with ROG product can be regarded as extreme PC. So I mean, you're getting best of the best products.
And what are some of the things you find on an extreme kind of hardware product, you know, that you're not going to find on a, you know, sort of your standard piece of hardware that, you know, any person's going to just run an average computer on?
Okay, of course, there's a few, not a few, a lot of unique features that you can only find on ASUS products.
I think we start the timer now.
Yeah. For example, we just invented a technology where you can do tweaking on a separate notebook. Like you're doing tweaking on F1 cars, you're doing a separate notebook.
Yeah, right.
So that's something will turn some people on because that's exclusive to ASUS. So there's a lot of things.
I mean, active involvement by the top people in the overclocking community have led to motherboard design. You know, Shimino, for one, is an example that springs to mind, where motherboard companies have gone to these overclockers and said, what do you want? You know, so we've seen some pretty over-the-top stuff with motherboards. We've seen 24-phase power recently, which is utterly unnecessary. But
we got 32.
30? Is that what
we got 32?
You've got that coming? You know, we've seen a motherboard for sale that actually has a copper pot ready for dry ice or LN2 to be poured into it, and that's in a consumer product in a box off the shelf. You know, so there's a long way between the motherboard that Dell or HP puts in a workstation and, you know, a high-end enthusiast board. They both do the same job, but the engineering that goes into it, and that's what we're all fans of, the engineering. The end result is only half of what it's about. It's knowing, when you look at your box and the cases on the side, you can't see the bits, but it's knowing what's in that box, that it's extreme components, pushed to the very limit, every single one of them, not just the CPU, but this voltage and that voltage and all the rest of it. Knowing that you've got that there, and just sitting there looking at your SuperPi score or your 3D Mark score, and not even playing a game and looking at the frame rates.
Yeah.
That's what makes an extreme
Dean, I'm
PC.
hoping you can, you know, I guess enlighten us on what the journey of somebody like you is, where at some point you must have decided, oh, you know, I'll tweak a few things, and, you know, I guess years down the track, you find yourself as, you know, one of the country's best overclockers. Yeah. Where did it start, and where do you suddenly realise, oh, I'm actually throwing an awful lot of money at this hobby?
Sponsorship.
Well, that helps, yeah.
Look, I started off like everyone else. You want to get value for money and increase the frequency of your CPU first, and then that kind of develops into, well, now that I'm doing that, maybe I should try and get a better motherboard or get maybe faster memory or better latency. And you end up I ended up on refrigeration cooling first, you know, and that was a few years ago, and it just got a lot worse. And I just take things too seriously, I think. So everything now is LN2, and, you know, I've got a, you know, LN2 supplier contacts I'm giving out to people. It's absolutely over the top now.
Yeah, and I mean, for the people who are watching this online, Dino, tonight we've got quite a rig set up. I think we'll try to drop a bit of the footage in later, but you know, later on in the night, he's going to be pushing some scores and seeing what it can do here tonight. But one of the things that I think is also then interesting is, why does this matter? What is it that across the board, I guess, what's that benefit down the track from other people who are just trying to push the limits of computing?
For overclocking, it's really huge. Basically, for many years, overclocking was very much a kind of, it had to be underground, and manufacturers would, I would go to product launches for motherboards, and there'd always be questions saying how to overclock, and you say, well, we obviously can't endorse that, but it goes very well. Because basically, people who overclock stuff broke them, broke everything, really. But it all changed pretty much in the middle of last year. Because all the manufacturers all at once kind of realized that all these overclockers were finding out what broke. And by finding out what broke, they fixed that, and suddenly their motherboards got a whole bunch more reliable. Which, I mean, everyone in this room's probably remembered the time when you bought a motherboard and it was pretty much a lottery whether it would work for a long time. But you probably also noticed in the last year that's really not the case anymore. They've become a whole heap more reliable across the board. And that goes for pretty much every component, because all the top manufacturers are using top overclockers to test their stuff before launching. And that not only makes it a lot more stable, it makes it a lot faster. And that's at the top end, obviously, but it obviously drips down. So everything is faster and more reliable these days. And that's all thanks to overclockers. And we've seen overclocking just rocket in popularity and influence over that year, to the point where we've had several world championships. With the best news being that Australia's got one of the very best teams in the world.
Let's not forget, so you're referring mainly to motherboards, but for me I think the big shift changed 3 or 4 years ago when Intel started to endorse overclocking with multiplier unlocked CPUs, the Extreme Edition CPUs. Intel had long resisted overclocking for a number of reasons. One of them, I think, is that it made transparent the fact that CPUs could be run at much higher frequencies, and that you could buy a $300 CPU and get it running at $800 CPU speeds, and that messes with their marketing model. They don't like that very much.
Changed it.
And they resisted it for such a long time. When we were doing Atomic Magazine, when all of the communities were looking at that kind of stuff, Intel were initially almost hostile. Then they became, as you said, accepting with a wink and a nod. And now they're completely out with it as motherboard manufacturers are too.
Well, the other thing to know, especially from Intel's point of view, I mean, when this first kind of was announced, it was like, don't tell anyone. But I mean, it's no secret anymore. Those Intel Nehalem chips, they're all clocked at about 2.93 gigahertz. They're all designed to run at 4 gigahertz stably on air, and they do. So basically, stuff is now so powerful, but it's being undersold quite heavily. So pretty much anything you buy from motherboard, graphics card or processor or RAM point of view, and especially RAM actually, because sometimes you've got to overclock that to make it work. Basically everything has a huge amount more performance in it from when you buy it to run stably, and then you start getting up to the extreme levels where it's not about running stably constantly, it's about running stably to run SuperPi for 10 seconds.
From a marketing perspective, it's the thin end of the wedge, isn't it? It's Fiat owning Ferrari, so they sell more four-door sedans. It's having that prestige flag-waving brand, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, overclocking from the starting point is like creating the more value for the people. For example, if you can run your $300 CPU at $800 level, then from Intel point of view, they'll be losing money because they're not going to sell much $800 CPUs. But people realize the benefit of overclocking will start to increase. Like people like Dino, they're so much into overclocking, turn into a habit, and a lot of I would say light overclocking user start to enjoy the increase of PC speeds.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a whole lot of benefit for overclocking.
I mean, I'm a totally super casual overclocker. Like I've got a Q6600 and it's maybe 20% overclock, but it's just like, I just want that a little bit more without ever getting myself into trouble, and it's just that night where it's actually now damn easy to do that, because I guess motherboards have hit that point where I can just, flip a couple of switches and it just does the job. Yeah.
I think we have to thank competition for the development of overclocking. It actually started a bit more than a year and a half ago. I think Intel felt a lot of pressure from AMD in K8 era because we all used AMD. No one used Intel. It was just basically if you were extremely loyal to it that you'd use it. That's why they were pushed into doing extreme things and whatever else, right? And they developed an absolutely unbelievable product in Conroe that just no one could believe that the product or the CPU from Intel could actually do that. And overnight they wiped out AMD basically. But that's where it started. And Team AU has been basically working with quite a few manufacturers actively, and we've literally changed the motherboard design, physical design, to facilitate for extremely high volts in extreme conditions. And that, as Nick mentioned, that really helped with stability and whatnot as well. And then now it's actually trickling into graphics cards, which is more intriguing for me. And I think ASUS is probably leading the way now with Mars, because they're concentrating on high-end cars. This is the important part, right? And this is where the next I think big thing is. It's graphics cards. What people can do from their expertise. I mean, ASUS is probably one of the biggest companies around, so they've got a lot of expertise in engineering. They can make graphics cards like Mars actually happen, but there's a few other manufacturers as well. It's actually quite exciting. I think that's where
there's a voltage unlocked graphics card, isn't there?
What they're actually doing now is they've got memory timings.
Yeah.
You can tweak memory timings on graphics. That's amazing.
We
No one is doing that. I
solder
love
and
that. That's
pencil
amazing. That's just incredible
Isn't it
stuff.
now?
Yeah. I haven't had a chance to play with them, but that's really exciting. Actually.
Yeah.
It's really good.
I mean, it's probably a good place then to to move into that. Is what are these areas of hardware that right now are starting to push into new areas? Because I think, as you say, everybody's used to the idea that motherboards, if you buy them, you can really start doing new tricks. So, I mean, is that something you could explain, I guess, a little bit about what these graphics cards that he's talking about there?
I think the particular video card that Dino is referring to is our Matrix 285. So that's been the world's first video card where you can tweak your memory timing. It's also got a lot of special features that I wouldn't mention about this. But I mean, being a manufacturer, we'll have to give big thanks to overclocker like Dino, because he's their team and a lot of overclockers around the world is putting a lot of effort into contribute to our R&D side. For example, if a motherboard or graphic card can survive extreme condition for 1 month, it can survive in a normal condition for 20 years. I mean, if you can survive sub 100 degrees for 1 month, you can, I mean, there's a lot of contribution from the overclocking, extreme overclocking side to a manufacturer like us.
Yeah, that's awesome. One thing maybe to sort of get into some of the specific maybe tips for people who are kind of getting into this scene, or they're just a bit more mainstream and are wondering what is the thing I should tweak to get that little bit more without too big a threat. I mean, Dino, do you have any, what are a few of those, I guess, elementary steps that you can take to get more out of your gear?
There's like about 4 main components I'd consider that could affect performance of the system. I mean, it's CPU, memory is very important, graphics card and hard drives now. I mean, SSD is taking over, and it's just doing some amazing, exciting things, because it's unlocking a bottleneck that PCs had for a long time, and SATA or serial ATA didn't really do what it was promising to do, but now it's going to change things around. But basically, so you can, if you do small changes to all those components, or CPU, memory, hard drive and graphics card, you can actually increase the performance of the system considerably above manufacturers. Because most of these manufacturers anyway will bin their products way above their operating frequencies, right? So they do anticipate people. There is a fail-safe there, and so people can take advantage of this. And you literally, you buy cheap components, push them up, they all benefit anyway.
I mean, a lot of people assume they might break their gear. Yeah, that's certainly for a very, very long time. I assumed that if I tried to overclock something, I would genuinely break it. So that's not really the case anymore, is it?
Well, you've got, I mean, CPU and
Short of
graphics
really
cards.
going nuts.
CPU and graphics cards is temperature is obviously important, right? So it depends how extreme you want to get. I mean, I've met people that you mentioned before that modify. Do some amazing things that modify the systems to make them look good, but they use, for example, water cooling, and they'll tie in a whole bunch of components, including memory, motherboard, whatnot, so you can really give it a ridiculous push in volts before these components will even heat up, right? So, but you have to take care of it, right? I mean, top-end cards are very hot cards. You stick them in a PC. If you put volts up, the temperatures will go through the roof, right? So you do have to start investing in cooling. So it does become a bit of a budget game. So you've really got to try and stick to your budget, though, because otherwise you'll become like me.
Just something that probably should have said a bit earlier. I don't know how many people are aware of this, but it's probably quite a few in this room. But processors get made in a giant round thing called a wafer, and basically the really expensive Extreme Edition processors come from the same wafer as the really cheap ones. It's all depending on a quality control process and binning, where someone says, right, we think this is a good batch. We'll take the ones out the middle of the wafer, and they'll be the Extreme Edition chips, and the ones sort of around here will be the normal ones. So you can buy the normal one, and it will be like, possibly that far away from the Extreme Edition one, which costs $1,000 more. So that's where you might want to start.
So extreme overclockers are right into serial numbers and batches. Yes. So you look around on a forum, an overclocking forum, and so it's the whatever CO stepping of a particular chip, which indicates the manufacturing, where it came from, the date it was manufactured, and that's the hot one. And
that adds a lot of value to the price when they sell them.
Oh, it does. It's all inside knowledge.
AMD ones actually you can actually tell specifically where on a wafer that silicon was made. It's amazing. It's amazing.
That's awesome.
But that's extreme PC, isn't it?
Well, yeah. Where are places potentially, I guess on the slightly cheaper side, where can people cut corners, or like where's the value? Where can somebody aim for really good value? Is it about buying a better motherboard and then a cheaper CPU, or what are those kind of trade-offs you can make to target good performance at a good price?
Well, from a motherboard point of view, quite often, there's a lot of, say, P55 chipset, and each manufacturer will have like a budget sort of one, and then an extreme one, but it's fundamentally the same chipset. And the expensive ones will generally have more features on it, but the performance really isn't that far different from the bottom to the top. I mean, there might be some more components for stability, but at the end of the day, it's the same motherboard coming from the same thing, but with less on it. So you can save yourself hundreds of dollars by buying a low-end motherboard if you know the high-end one is good.
But this is the question, though, is for people who don't necessarily know where the best trade-off is. I mean, what would you think if somebody's going to put their money in one particular component above other things, and they are buying, or is that too hard a question?
I think that,
if you ask me, I would say put the money on the motherboard itself.
I mean, you upgrade in phases. So you buy a CPU that might last 2 or 3 years, but during that time you might buy 1 or 2 graphics cards. You won't upgrade your, so you'll buy your motherboard and your RAM and your storage, and that'll stay put forever. And you might cycle that over systems that last you 10 years or more if it's certain components. But the time will come when you play in a new game, and you know because the word is out if it's a CPU limited game or if it's a graphic limited game, and you can see anyway if you measure it. You can download tools that'll show you while you're playing the game what your percentage load is for the CPU, for the graphics card, what your temperatures are for the memory subsystem, so you can see exactly where you need to spend your next $500. And so you put that component in, and then in 6 months you upgrade another one. It's very rare that an extreme PC will buy a whole new system in one batch. The only time they've ever done that is the very first PC they've ever bought.
Yeah, probably.
Well, just a very quick one there. It's from experience, the biggest pain in the ass component to replace is your motherboard. If that goes, you've got to take everything out. It's a hell of a job. I'd say don't skimp on that, really. Although having said that,
Yeah.
there's not really such thing as a bad motherboard in a way from most people's point of view, if you buy it from one of the main brands.
Yeah, that's true. I would always, I would always look at getting at least mid to high-end motherboard, because you wouldn't change motherboard as often as, for example, a CPU or a graphics card. I'd be upgrading graphics cards more than anything else, because that's where the performance is if you're gaming, or hard drives if you need storage. Basically, that's you can keep one CPU for 2 or 3 years and still do the same job. Really, it's minor differences.
Right now, the upgrade proposition, which is head and shoulders above the rest, is an SSD. It's been the hot product of the year by a country mile. So you get a fairly small capacity drive, up to 160. You can get more if you spend a whole lot more, but you put your operating system on that, you put your Steam install on that, your favourite games, and you are absolutely rocking. It loads so much faster. It's
Just don't benchmark on it.
every system upgrade I've ever done hasn't come close to the SSD upgrade. It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And they're coming down in price and up in capacity, so that's the...
Well, Dan, what's exciting you most of all the different things that are going on at the moment? What's the stuff that's really getting you excited?
This is going to sound funny, but I actually just discovered this Windows 7. I love it, actually. You know what? I've stopped using my laptop, and I'm now looking into upgrading my PC, because I really like this operating system, the multimedia features, just the feel of it. It's really good, actually.
Does it help you? Like, this is something actually, that I meant to bring up is, do we find now that, if it's all about just kind of getting to the boot of the OS, if in certain kinds of competition, is that going to be better under Windows 7 than it was with XP, or is...
Windows 7, you would probably boot higher than Windows Vista because of the amount of... They've just changed the way they boot the system. In fact, it probably boots as fast as a trimmed down XP, which is quite interesting. But look, every benchmark has its own operating system and a version of the operating system as well, right? So you can't just sort of say, well, Windows 7 is best for this, or XP for that, and whatnot.
Well, it might be a good time to get into some questions, as the question might start drilling into a bit more detail or something like that. So it's time for everybody to bite back. So we've got a cameraman and we've got a microphone, and we're going to come around the room. If you've got a question, it could be about extreme stuff. I think there's something down the back there, but if we get into some extreme questions for extreme... no, I'm not even going to go there.
You gave it a good go.
I'm a person that's never done any overclocking before. If I want to start reading up stuff, what would you suggest is a good resource or good websites to go to and find some tips?
Yep. Someone mentioned Atomic. It's a good website. I think Overclockers Australia is probably the main website in Australia to read up on. But one of the more extreme homes of overclocking is i4memory.com, i4memory.com. That website has more overclockers on there, or it's very concentrated with overclockers rather than anything else, because OCAU, for example, is quite a big website, or Atomic as well. So they cater for different types of audiences, So there's a lot of people which will go into extreme detail explaining absolutely everything what you need to do, because these BIOSes now, probably unfortunately thanks to us, are extremely complicated, and because we wanted them, and they've kind of put it all out there, and a new user will go into a BIOS and they'll go, "Wow, what do I do now? Which button do I push?"
I think that i4memory is probably the 5th or the 7th step in the process of learning that you want to go to. Jump to the starting point. You go to a mainstream tech site such as ANandTech, ANandTech is great. So you go to their overclocking guide, Google overclocking guide, and whatever your CPU is. Get that on your laptop, online, on your desk, where your main desktop machine is. Refer to that while you screw around in BIOS, because obviously while you're in BIOS, you're not online. Follow all the instructions and experiment. It is trial and error.
So
You don't really need to go onto a website. Just read ASUS motherboard menus. I mean,
actually, some of the menus are actually good.
Yeah, I mean, you don't even have to go to BIOS to do overclocking, because a lot of vendors like ASUS, we have invented the application to overclocking in Windows. So in a particular application, we have a function called auto tuning. So what you do is you press one button, go to sleep, go do other things. After you come back in 10 minutes, your system is automatically overclocked. I mean, it's about creating more value for your system, right?
Well, another good starting point is just YouTube. There's loads of videos on there of people doing it very much from basics. Just have a look on there, and they go walk you through it and show you at the same time.
Cool.
Themselves. Would a whole bunch of optimized Windows app be something you'd look for from vendors?
Look, I've actually run I've run SuperPi on Linux before, and it was so much faster than Windows. It was it was unbelievable, right? But the problem is that we have to standardize on something, and not many people use Linux, and that's the big problem, right? And also, the other trouble is that you would, if we started using Linux, you would see a lot of people being at top of the game because they're good software guys rather than tweakers, or actually people that actually knew about the hardware or how to push it to the limits. So that's the other trouble that you have, you know. So, but yeah, I mean, I'd love to, you know, give Linux a crack. I loved it when I saw like my time halved compared to Windows. I just laughed. It was incredible. Yeah, it was just amazing.
Well, actually, that just put us in mind. Those sort of optimizations kind of do exist on Windows, but when you're running a benchmark. But the thing is, in competitive overclocking, it's cheating. I mean, you can hack the registry and get all kinds of commands to get a higher score.
That's why we stand
but that's where the rules and regulations have to come in, which is going to hold that back.
We've sort of hit a peak at the moment in terms of hardware performance. So when will we see a change from hardware overclocking to software overclocking?
It's already happening. It's already there, but it's on a different level, right? I mean, this guy's talking about customizing kernel to get benchmark to run faster, right? The software overclocking that we have now is based on software controlling the hardware in your system. But we're doing that right now. I mean, I'll be basically doing that tonight, you know? Yeah.
So, you know, when will we see professional software overclocking? Like we see Google Hackfests and stuff like that.
As opposed to like third-party, custom, open source applications.
Yeah, but you kind of do in that, like for Windows XP, there's still a million different versions out there, like ultralight versions. I mean, for some of the benchmarking ones these guys use, they're only 50 megabyte installs. They've had everything else taken off. And I think the pro gamers use those sort of things as well, where every slice of fat is cut out that you wouldn't want to need.
That Windows 7 that I'm running is on a CD, and the ISO is 599 megs in size. I don't need all the other crap on it for.
Just in regards to PC modification and stuff, a while ago people were putting nearly their whole systems into containers and pouring vegetable oil or olive oil over the top of them. Have you guys ever seen or heard of any wacky or out of this world modifications in your time as industry people?
Hell yeah. We made one. When I was at Atomic, we built a vegetable oil fish tank when we filled it up, and the performance was underwhelming. And it was a pain in the ass because it was a sticky and we had it at one of the events, and you know we wouldn't want one at home. You know, it leaks.
Did it smell like chips?
No, it didn't smell like anything. But technically, but you know, you're right in that it's all about thermal management, and that's a super fancy way of doing thermal management. Yeah. You know, water cooling is now mainstream. Only a couple of years ago, it was hardcore. You can buy kits now. I think that's remarkable. I think that all of these things that are currently high-end, and you know, the stuff that Denos, for example, is making around with, in a couple of years it'll enter the market. We saw it with modding. We saw, you know, 10 years ago, everybody had a beige PC, then a couple of guys got a Dremel and put a window in the side, then someone put a cold cathode in, and then PC Case Gear in Melbourne started selling that shit, and now everyone's got one, and now you can buy, you know, it's impossible to buy a beige PC if you wanted to. So everything that is...
Is that going to be the next really cool thing? Having like just a beige box?
It could well be.
Like, I don't need to look cool.
Well, no one would have seen that coming, so yes.
Yeah. Nick, what's some of the cool stuff you've seen in modding?
In modding? I think the best PCs I've seen, retail ones, Voodoo PC. I haven't seen him for a while because he's not been in Australia, but I mean, those guys like carve out the shapes in the aluminium cases and chassis and stuff. They look awesome. OCAU, also there's a guy on there it's like a 50-page thread on this. I think it's called the Monolith, is it? He's made some absolutely monstrous thing there, but I mean, actually I think pretty much every forum, but OCAU's got a good one, has a whole heap of people's mods that they've taken in some cases over a year to build, and they've photographed every stage of the process, and pretty much any one of those is absolutely stunning.
And they're sculptures. They've got nothing to do with performance or cooling. You know, we've got, what's his name? The guy that did Aurak. Remember Aurak 5 years ago? Blew everyone away, that green tubed perspex sided thing. Didn't heard that it had beautiful photography.
He's a neighbour of mine. He's like
guy.
2K from me.
Yeah.
I actually went to his house. The guy's a genius.
Yeah, so he made
sculptor, literally.
It is sculpture. He made a thing called WMD, Weapon of Mass Destruction, and it was a nuclear bomb. It was this stainless steel polished thing that looked nothing at all like a computer.
Awesome.
And inside it was a Duron 600. It was nothing. It didn't matter. You know, it made an operating system work, so it was a computer. But
it's cool. Is that there's kind of the two sides of this scene, isn't there? Where it's just like, you know, people who trick out their cars. You know, they're either tricking it out to get more out of the engine, or they're just tricking it out so it looks cool. You know, and there's kind of the two nice parts of it. Where, yeah.
Yes, thank you. Talking into one of my mics, that's good. To what extent would you contribute the latest games out there to the extent that it's pushing along performance-based computing? Is that the primary source of producing, you know, the next generation of hardware?
It used to be, mate. You know, for the last 10 years, diminishing, PC games have sold high-end graphics cards and expensive CPUs. The change in the games market, i.e. piracy forcing game developers to move to consoles and away from PCs, has meant fewer PC games each year that require a hardware upgrade. Now this is really bad news for AMD and Nvidia, because, and you know, systems integrators and vendors, because, and it's a really serious situation. In the old days, as you know, we'd have a new video card from either AMD or Intel, usually within a month of each other, every 6 months. And they'd sell a lot of them at $800 because people played 10 good PC games each year. So one market drove the other. PC games market's drying up. You know, what's going to be out this year? Sweet fuck all. We've got, you know, Modern Warfare 2, which is a console port. We've got Serious Sam HD, which is a 5-year-old game remake. We've got Borderlands, which is a console port. And off the top of my head, I can't think of anything else. Why would you spend $800 to play any of those games? I don't think it's tricky.
At the same time, that's where kind of all the marketing is still gamers sell hardware. That's for sure, because God knows I try. I have to sell bloody ads for the overclocker. It's a pain in the ass. But basically, what happens is the gamers look for what the best graphics card is, like ATI or an Nvidia. And then they'll buy whatever level of that they can afford because of the halo effect. Now, the people who work out what the fastest is are the overclockers. So the overclocker's kind of telling everyone, all the gamers, what to buy, but they're still considered by pretty much all the component manufacturers that it's where it's at, and Intel think that as well. I mean, Asus are in a very weird thing where it's all their best motherboards that they say, oh, these overclock like hell. They're all Republic of Gamers. They're not Republic of Overclockers. Don't I know it? I'll try, but yeah, it's gaming is still what sells in what's left.
In that sense, like, it might not be as regular an upgrade cycle, but perhaps out of that community that aren't overclockers, it's still gamers who are kind of buying, when they upgrade, they buy high-end hardware so they know, okay, this is going to last me 2.5 years until the next.
I'd love Harlan to shed some light on it. What sort of percentage of people buy, you know, the high-end card compared to the mid-range or the low-end card. I'm sure it's 5% or less.
It's less than 2%.
Right.
Less than 2%.
Yeah, right.
You know,
Yeah, the majority of the general audience still buys the low-end video cards.
Right.
People still buy off-the-shelf PCs. DIY is very few percentage.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, I think people would be interested to know that Gigabyte said this, I presume it's the same for all of you guys, sell more high-end motherboards and graphics cards in Australia than they do in China.
Yeah, they do. The percentage of a high-end motherboard and graphic card is a lot higher in Australia compared to even Japan. Like I sell a lot more motherboards, high-end motherboard in Australia compared to China, like 100 times. Yeah.
That's why we got some of the best overclockers in the world.
Well, I was talking to Dino about that before. It's like, why is Australia so good? Because I mean, it's not just Dino. It's like James Young Pro in Adelaide, and we had Tim Marshall, who's now in Indonesia, although he's taking a break doing other things, and a whole load of other guys as well. I can't remember what you were telling me. Why? I guess it was because you were saying supply used to be really bad here, so people had to make do with what they had compared with the rest of the world, and so got good at overclocking crappy components before all the good stuff came here.
You know what? I still have more enjoyment out of getting the same, on the same level. Like I'm using a Core i7 960, which is a locked CPU, and I'm competing against Young Pro as well. And a few other guys like a Kale and a few other guys from Team EU. We're competing against guys that are running unlocked CPUs that cost $1,000 plus US, and ours are, you know, half it or whatever. You know, so I prefer doing that because I just don't like the idea of why in the hell would you buy a $1,000 CPU or $1,500? It doesn't make sense to me at all. Like I just don't, even as an extreme overclock, I still don't encourage that at all. You know. It just doesn't make sense. But other components, there is a reason now because they're a lot better quality. And you're right, I've heard it from quite a few manufacturers saying exactly the same thing. Australia sells a lot of high-end hardware and graphics cards and motherboards.
I'll just add a little bit more to that. It's very funny when these guys use the lower-end hardware against the guys who spend a lot of money on the really expensive stuff and beat them because the tantrums are worth watching.
So it's probably a great place to wrap up then. Ladies and gentlemen, Australia rules! You know, cheap claps, so it's good. So now I think we're going to get down to the section where everybody tells us what's turning them on. Cool. Dino, can you tell us what the coolest thing you've been playing with lately, or was it Windows 7? Is that kind of the thing you wanted to?
Yeah, Windows 7, and I'm a RAM addict. I love RAM, so I've got Corsair Dominators, and there's a whole bunch of other manufacturers I play with. It's just something that, I don't know, I love staring at a blue screen for 5 hours. It's just my addiction. Some people sniff cocaine. I look at blue screens for 5 hours at a time.
I just realised, does anybody want a Windows 7 t-shirt? Jeez, I almost stacked it just then, actually. Does Dino want it?
Sure, I'll go.
Yeah? Oh, Dino, sorry, guys.
No.
I just realized we got it at the launch, say, hey, you know, something to give away.
We've got a lot of t-shirts between us.
We got the hat. Crispy made the noise.
Yeah, okay. So we had a hat as well. There we go. Sorry? I actually have I'm not even going to get into my sticker color. I have a place where I stick stickers, and it's perfectly safe. Ben, what's turning you on?
All right, I was going to bring along my Logitech G940 HOTAS flight control force feedback system tonight.
Can you say that again slowly so we can actually hear what you said?
Logitech G940 HOTAS, which is hands-on throttle and stick. It's a flight sim utility, which is, it's a throttle with lots of buttons, and it's a joystick which wobbles and gives you feedback. So I guess that's half the segment. It's hot. It's not cheap, but it's hot. But a week ago, our friends at Sennheiser gave me these to try out, and I honestly wanted to rave about them because they're so shit hot. They're the PC350. They're gamer headphones. They're premium. They ain't cheap. I use these now to listen to music. I use it to play my co-op gaming, and it's replaced the headphones that I used to use for listening to music. They are proper Sennheiser music headphones, but they've got a kick-ass noise-cancelling mic. They look the bomb, and proper. It's not none of that USB crap with a built-in sound card, so you can and should use an X-Fire or a Sonar or something like it for proper effects, and you're set.
Nice. They work. And
they're
good.
hot, mate. They're hot. Yeah.
Harlem, what's the coolest thing you've seen lately? Or
apart from all the fancy ASUS products, I had a chance last night to play with.
Sorry, I was just giving you the hey.
Play with a product from Logitech called the Swissbox, where you can. That I just got it from my friend who is working as a Logitech PM somewhere in the distribution. So it's nice and easy device where you can hook up your music file from wireless. So stream all your music. It's compatible to iTunes. So everything in your iTunes from your PC can be streamed to your living room from the Swissbox. So it's a cool little thing to play with. I spent 30 minutes to set it up, and it's working perfectly.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Those things are cool. I can't remember. Someone might have mentioned one last week as well. I think it's exciting quite a few people at the moment. Yeah, they're cool.
Good. It reads the LED reads Japanese, so it's fancy. It's fancy.
Good multilingual gear. Yeah. Nick, what's exciting you?
Well, there's a couple of things. One of them's plasma TV, which is a weird thing. I seem to be a bit over, because I review TVs as one of my other million jobs. LCD TVs with all their really 200 megahertz technology and stuff for motion smoothing, it's not good. It really, really destroys what you're watching. It makes it too real.
Yeah.
It's really weird. It's like you're watching actors on set instead of characters in the scene, and you can see all the makeup and you can see the wobbles of the camera going along the runway. It's really distracting. Whereas plasma, which isn't quite as good at doing that, it's got subfield drive or whatever, actually looks better because it doesn't strip away all the film grain and what have you. And I think that's a big realization that quite all the other TV reviewers are doing. I haven't got time for another one, but that's probably.
Well, we've never mentioned that before, and it's one of the things that I've always found cool about the 600 hertz subfield drive tech in the Panasonic gear for the plasmas is that for maths nerds, it's like 600 hertz is the common multiplier between all the different TV standards. 24 hertz, 25 hertz, 50, 60 hertz, 600. Is the common multiple. That's the lowest common denominator. So you get to that, and yes, all of these different technologies don't have to have frame substitution or any kind of frame blending going on to actually deliver the right image at that refresh rate.
Well, I'll tell you this, as much as it sounds impressive, it's nowhere near as smooth as LCD smoothing, not even slightly. But I'd rather have a little bit of judder, frankly, than watch the Dark Knight's my test film and just think, who's that guy in the mask standing there? It doesn't help that much. And it's a pain in the arse when you're going through 19 menu layers just to do that.
We did that. My brother-in-law bought a LCD, big shiny LCD TV, and my sister was saying, look at this series, you're looking at it say Home and Away or whatever. Looks like an amateur kind of shot film, right? Yeah. So we were messing around with the menus until we found that 200 hertz and turned that thing off, and it became normal. So that feature.
But that's what you're paying more for from everyone.
Oh, jeez.
If you didn't hear that, the caller was, you underclocked it. Anyway, it's good. One thing, on that TV note, is is the Pioneer Curo still the best TV of the decade in a sense?
And then they stopped selling them.
They stopped making it, but it's I don't think anything that's come since.
The new Panasonic, I've got a G15 at home at the moment. it's a lot less power consumption. It's got tons of features in it. 42-inch one's about $2,200. It's really cheap. It's got the same features as Samsung's 8 Series, $5,000 more expensive one. But the great thing about plasmas, there used to be completely true blacks in there, and it was just like, it was either off or color, and that was great. The neoplasmas, they're like a bad LCD actually, where there's no true black anymore. It's all a bit washed out brown and yellow, which is a real shame.
Yeah.
But it's still a great TV.
Yeah. Cool. Well, yeah, I don't have a best thing of the week, best thing ever of the week this week. Sorry.
You always have the best ones.
But I do actually, and Hamish is holding it, so because we're using it tonight. Yeah, can you bring it over so I can, and I don't know how I'll do a close-up later for when we, but I'll hold it up at the camera up there or something. Been playing with this lately, and funnily enough, we're using it here tonight. It is Canon's HF21. Is this the HF21 Legria video camera? And man, this thing is hot poop. Quite frankly, I can see. I don't know. I'm not a regular swearer, so I'll say weird things like hot poop. It is a 64 gig flash hard drive, 64 gig flash memory camcorder, and it actually, one of the really awesome things is that, I mean, it's great hardware, it's Canon's gear, but one of the things is I used to do a lot of video camera reviewing and that sort of thing, and AVC HD is one of those formats that was like a real pisser when it arrived, because everybody was trying to start using it a lot, but it was generally really, really low bit rate, which meant the classic was, if you're, say, you're filming a football game or something and you're kind of panning quickly across a field of grass, you like instantly start seeing all of the macro blocking where it's compressing the grass in the background, and you can't help but see that when you're staring at it on a 50-inch plasma or LCD. This camera is now actually pushing out AVC HD at its maximum possible bit rate, which is 24 megabits a second, I think it is. But it means a lot of that problem is now basically disappeared, and even at that bit rate on the 64 gig built-in memory, you're talking about 12 hours or it's like more hours than you should ever shoot at a time. I think that's the classic when they talk about you can shoot non-stop for a week. And you're like, what am I ever going to do with that footage? So it's a really hot little camera, and it's like, $1,700 or something like that. I can't remember exact figures off the top of my head, but hot little camera, really, really cool, really light, shoots easy, imports easily. A really nice little number. And for people who are playing around and want to use small cameras a bit more seriously, like we do, it actually has a microphone input. So many low-end cameras do not have a microphone input, so you're stuck with crappy onboard audio. Cameras like this one, where they actually have a mic input, means you can then use a good microphone and get good audio. And combining that with good images and crap audio means kind of crappy, whereas good images from something like this, plus your own microphone, and you're talking about competing with completely professional grade footage in a very, very, very small price range. So hot stuff. Maybe I should have called it my best thing ever. Anyway, cool. But that's also, I think we should now, we'll just start saying goodbye to everybody and where people can find them. Dino, where can people find you when you're usually overclocking or hanging about?
iFormemory.com, Extreme Systems, Overclockers Australia.
Yeah, and Team AU?
TeamAU.net is our news site, so that's something that people can also
keep up with what you guys are doing.
Yep,
cool.
absolutely.
Are there any big comps coming up or anything like that for you guys?
There's a few running at the moment that Gigabyte and MSI have going, and so we're competing there too.
Cool.
And
awesome.
also Nick's organising one of the premier overclocking events called F1OC. It's some of the really, really big names are competing in that. That's that's probably the biggest focus that we have.
Cool. Ben, where can people find you?
People can find me at Byteside, Seamus.
What's the URL?
Byteside, here's the URL.
Ben is now on Twitter as well, aren't you?
I can't tell you how much I love Twitter. It's been a slow and you know, it's a process.
Yeah.
People can also find me. I do a monthly column in Atomic. You know, some positive feedback on the Atomic forums regarding that wouldn't, you know, be unwelcome. And bits and bobs, freelance around game sites and the rest of it.
Cool. Harlan, where can people find you and your products?
Not at our service center, but I can be contacted by mobile or business card. Give up business card afterwards. Email, of course. Twitters.
Yeah.
We on Twitters, right?
And what's your local? Is it a .com.au?
Yeah, we have .com.au.
Yep, cool.
Asus.com.au.
Is Asus on Twitter?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, and they're on the Twitters. It's all good. Yeah. Nick, where are you currently promoting yourself as
I don't know. It changes all the time, doesn't it? I guess, like Dino said, F10C.org's been taking up a bit of my time lately with big results on there for overclocking. TheOverclocker.com or burlesquemag.com, MacTheMag.com. We're launching a pro gaming magazine soon, hopefully before the end of the year, and also a new netbook magazine as well. Just really big. And I'm doing a feature for APC and The Age.
Awesome. What's that on?
Which one? The Age is on some new auction website that's exploding in popularity and quite fun now that eBay is a bit stale and boring. And APC's TVs and PCs.
Cool. And you can find me at Byteside, and you know, I write in other places, but I'll just stick to Byteside because I'm the host. You know, and we've got, you know, forums, and we're actually getting a bit busier on Facebook. Check out the fan page. It's you know, there's a lot more going on there. And Byteside.com and all the cool stuff that goes on there. Next, give you the little tease for next time. We're talking about the Naughties. Next, it's the last show of the first series of 6 shows. Is our next show back on the Tuesday, 24th of November, and it's all about the Naughties, the best and worst of the decade. And we're going to set up some stuff so people can contribute their ideas and their thoughts and what they think are all the great moments in tech and games and geekery of this fabulous decade. So keep an eye out for that online and come and visit us. And otherwise, we will see you next time here on Byteside. Thanks, guys.